All of the Star Wars discourse may be focused on The Mandalorian and Grogu right now, but before that movie was released, Lucasfilm dropped an incredibly good animated series called Maul, Shadow Lord. Set around 1 year after the Clone Wars, the series follows former Sith Lord Maul as he attempts to rebuild his criminal syndicate on a planet untouched by the Empire. And while there, he also manages to find someone who could potentially become his apprentice. Yes, this is the first Star Wars project, outside of Tales of the Empire, to truly focus on a villainous character, and that's really cool, especially since that perspective allows the show to have a dark and mature tone. Unfortunately, there are a couple of side characters that did make the show feel a little childish at times. So I personally wouldn't say that this show compares to something like Andor, but it still feels more grounded and serious than most other Star Wars projects, which is nice. This is a surprisingly character-driven show. Not every storyline works for me, and some character dynamics are a little cliché, but the character building stuff between Maul and his apprentice is absolutely fantastic. Devin is a great character. Though she doesn't have much dialogue, we perfectly understand what her wants and desires are, and so does Maul. So he immediately starts planning out ways to manipulate her. But instead of going directly to her, Maul allows Devin to come to him. He gives her the chance to see that his dark side philosophy can actually be beneficial to her, which is a far more interesting way than we've seen manipulation be portrayed in this franchise. Because Devin clearly wants to do the right thing, she wants to do good, but she's been told to hide and repress her Jedi powers. So when giving in to her more aggressive emotions allows her to feel like she's making a difference in the world, it's easy to see why she might want to continue doing that. So Devin is a character who is in conflict with herself, and that conflict does make for a rather interesting story, especially since it gives her an incredibly unique and interesting relationship with Maul. I honestly wish this series focused more on their dynamic together, but I'm sure we'll see their relationship develop even further in future seasons. On that note, this series does a great job of explaining why Maul is looking for an apprentice in the first place. He wants a tool to use against the Empire. At this point in the timeline, Maul has clearly fallen from grace. He's not in his prime anymore. He's going to need help if he's going to exact his revenge. And that is an interesting bit of context that is clearly missing in Star Wars Rebels. See, in that show, I never really understood why Maul wanted to take Ezra as his apprentice, but now I do. Maul is a lonely character, and he's desperate to have someone, anyone, help him achieve his goals. Ezra just happened to be there, so Maul pounced at the opportunity to have a new apprentice. Now, a storyline that used to feel really weird and forced to me actually makes a lot of sense. Though, since Devin is nowhere to be found in Star Wars Rebels, I'm very interested in seeing what will happen to her character. Sure, you can see her character arc coming from a million miles away, but it definitely feels earned. Her fall from grace is a believable one, especially since Maul is positively reinforcing her negative emotions. So I'm looking forward to seeing what will come of her character. Unfortunately, the other main characters are nowhere near as interesting. Brander Lawson is a police detective who basically acts as the show's third protagonist, but his arc is a pretty generic one, and the relationship he has with his son is extremely cliché. I do like the dynamic between Lawson and Maul, though. They have a fun little cat and mouse thing going on. And the fact that they both have a negative view on the Empire only made their relationship feel all the more interesting. Because while they clearly don't like each other, they both have a greater disdain for the Empire. So keeping the Empire off planet is actually beneficial for the both of them. Plus, I do like Wagner Moura's voice work as Lawson, so hopefully the character will feel a bit more fleshed out in the future. Speaking of the voice cast, Dennis Haysbert is great as Devon's Jedi Master, Daki, though I can't hear him speak without also thinking of an Allstate commercial, which is pretty funny. Richard Ayoade is fine as Lawson's police droid partner, Two Boots, a character whose arc is predictable and personality is a bit annoying. David W. Collins is clearly having a fun time voicing Maul's personal service droid Spybot, but this character did not work for me at all. I just found all of his gibberish to be unnecessary and annoyingly childish. But he's not the worst character in this show. That honor goes to an Alina crime lord named Vario. I absolutely hate this guy. Chris Diamantopoulos does a fine job of voicing the character, but he also has some of the worst dialogue in the entire series. I mean, Vario literally makes a comment in the finale about bowels not being so bad. Aside from the smell and the darkness, of course. Like, what even is that? I don't know, but I really hope this character doesn't last long in Season 2, though it would probably be even better if he doesn't even show up at all. Thankfully, Gideon Adlon is really good as Devon, and Sam Witwer is absolutely fantastic as Maul. His voice work, along with the writing in general, goes a long way in providing Maul with an impressive amount of depth. Before the Clone Wars, Maul was always just a cool-looking guy with an iconic design and a sick-ass lightsaber. He didn't actually have much of a character. Now, he's a deeply rich and tragic character that is comparable to the mythical figure of Sisyphus. He's clearly still a villainous character, but that also makes his growth and development feel all the more impressive. Because this show actually allows you to feel for and empathize with Maul a bit, which almost makes his refusal to grow from being a villain feel all the more tragic. But it's the only life he knows. Plus, watching Maul crashing out and having crazy visions is definitely some of the best parts of the show. Because not only do these scenes provide us with an insightful look into Maul's mysterious past, but they also give Witwer the chance to showcase his range as an incredible voice actor who clearly understands his character. It's just a shame that Maul has to share his screen time with less interesting characters and less engaging plot lines. Some of the Mandalorian Clone Wars stuff carries over quite well, but I didn't exactly care for the Pike Syndicate stuff. Though I do like how the Pikes bear a closer resemblance to their live-action counterparts here, because the ever-changing depiction of this one alien race continues to be baffling. It's almost as inconsistent as the Empire's depiction as a competent and menacing force. But I appreciate how, much like with Andor, this show helps us understand why the Empire was so reviled throughout the galaxy to begin with. Things get pretty serious in this show. Spybot referring to stormtroopers as shiny impies is annoyingly childish, but seeing the Empire interrogating people, making people disappear, and forcing the citizens of Janix to live under a fascist state are all real-world parallels that do feel rather scary. And that depiction doesn't end with stormtroopers or Imperial officers who take issue with Two Boots and his two boots. It extends to Inquisitors too. As much as I love the concept of Inquisitors, they never really seemed like much of a threat before. But Merrick, who was first introduced in Ahsoka, actually feels like a genuine villain here, which is great, because his intimidating presence and his ability to hunt down and track people efficiently actually gives the show a solid sense of tension. And the same goes for the Crow, who was first introduced in Tales of the Jedi. Merrick and the Crow are both surprisingly formidable here, to the point where Maul struggles to hold his own against the two of them, which is fun. So even though we already know what their fates ultimately are, I definitely hope we get to see more of them in the future. But of course, Merrick and the Crow don't even come close to who shows up in the finale. And while I'm sure you already know who I'm referring to, I'll refrain from spoiling that appearance in this review. All I'll say is, I think the character is handled extremely well here. And I usually don't like how Disney Plus shows bring in a random cameo for the finales, but I love how this appearance makes this finale feel like a genuine horror movie. Speaking of cameos, I like how Dryden Voss and Crimson Dawn factor into this story. Because as someone who personally loves Solo, a Star Wars story, I'm happy to see that the movie is finally connecting to something. But annoying side characters aside, Maul Shadow Lord is an undeniably engaging show in its own right. This is a beautifully animated crime drama, and the animation, which should have been mentioned way earlier in this review, is incredibly impressive. This is probably the best looking animated Star Wars project to date. So, while I still don't love it as much as some other fans seem to, this is an undeniably damn good show, one that I would love to see more of. Which means that Maul Shadow Lord would definitely get a recommendation from me. But be sure to let me know what you think of this series, and as always, thanks for watching.